Now, number 2. We could, again, this is your class. I'm happy to teach you everything you want to know and not stuff you don't want to know. There's 2 ways to solve this problem. One is decidedly more complex than the other, and one, all of the remediators and all the people that I know who are remediating complex tables, they never use method 1, and they always use method 2. That being said, because this is your class, I'm happy to teach you both methods, or if you want to just learn the one method that actually everybody uses, we could just focus on that one. It's up to you. Or I could show you both methods and then you can. Why waste my time learning something I'm not going to use? Is that what I just heard? Do other people feel the same way?
Yes.
Yeah? You already know your head's going to be pounding enough as it is. Why add more? Cool.
Can you just kind of show us?
I can show you, yeah. Yeah, so I'll show you the way that nobody does, and then we'll do the way. So the reason I said this first is if you were going to do both ways, you might want to save a copy of this, right? If you're saving your work, you might want to make a copy of it so you can save having used both methods, right? But I'll just show you, and I'll show you real fast, right, the first way, because if you're not going to do it, just to kind of show you the functionality. The problem with this table, so Charlotte, I think this starts to get to part B of your question, right? So the problem with this table, the column headers line up correctly with their stuff below them, right? But we have issues with things like outcome measures, balanced measures, and there's a couple further down, workload indicators and so on. If outcome measures gets treated like a column header, then it's related to these 2 things below it, which would make sense, right? But as a column header, it's also going to be related to all this stuff, and that doesn't really make sense, right? Meanwhile, if it's a row header, there's no data next to it, right? So, right, this is kind of the scenario that you were thinking about, right? From an authoring standpoint, what would have been better is to move outcome measures over here, right? I'm trying not to stand in your way, but if we move it out here and had it span 2 rows, just like Perth did before for wholesale, that would be better. And then balance measures out here and spanning 4 rows, right? From an authoring standpoint, that'd be easier. And we've seen this in even more complex tables where there's even like stacks of headers that like this one relates to these, but then this one up here relates to like this bigger group, and then this one up here relates to even a bigger group, and it can get really confusing, right? If you've got tables like that, and if you're wearing your document designer, creator, author hat, make simpler tables. Maybe have 2 tables instead of only 1 massively complex table. I've looked at tables that I would like to think that I'm not terribly cognitively challenged at any rate, right? I mean, as you know, we're thinking accessibility for all, right? Cognitive disabilities and what I like to think that, it may, not that bad. But if I'm looking at a table and I can't figure out how stuff is related, how do you think somebody who's really cognitively disabled is going to handle that table, right? Or somebody who, has dyslexia, who has a hard time tracking across the page anyways, and then they have to figure that out, right? That's tough. Or people who are visually impaired and using screen magnification to try to figure out what's going on in that table, right? So again, designers, authors, and creators, if you can, make more tables, make simpler tables, whatever, then would be something to consider. So when we've got this scenario, we still have to link the data cells to the header cells, right? The problem with outcome measures and balance measures and so on is if we just assign column headers and row headers and hit go, right, that magic button to link all this stuff, then that's where you get outcome measures also being linked to this stuff way down here, for example, or being linked to nothing at all, right? So the magic button won't work in this situation, right? One method is to manually link all of the data cells and all of the headers to what they need to be linked to, right? Did we do that when you were here before?
So I took only the basic.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we actually have a lot of time to cover tables.
Yeah.
So I have everything table, but
Right, okay. So Yeah, so if we're going to manually link everything, we select all the data cells and link them to their headers. And then we would have to select these and link them to this. Then we have to select the outcome measures and link it there. And the same thing for linking stuff to balanced measures and so on, right? Kind of drawing your own map. If you're going to do it this way, right, I would recommend printing out the table and actually bracketing and drawing arrows for what gets linked to what and so on, right, to kind of help keep straight, because it can get really, really confusing, right? So that's method number one. Method number two is to actually redraw the table in the tag tree. And we can do that. We can redraw it in the table editor, give it the layout that would have been more ideal with having outcome measures over here and spanning those two rows and all that. We can do that in the tag tree in the table editor. And remember, we don't change the physical view, right? So the table still looks like that, but in the table editor, it looks different, and it's much easier to understand and read and all that stuff, right? The redraw method, once you learn it, once you get used to it, it's the same thing over and over and over again, and it's really pretty simple once you grasp the concept and you learn some things not to do, right? And I'll show you some of that stuff. I've learned 100 ways to not redraw a table, right? And I've learned a couple ways that work. The other way of manually linking stuff can get pretty confusing, right? So I'll show you the manually linking thing because some of you wanted to see it, but then the redraw method generally, and if you're going to redraw something, I still recommend drawing out how it's going to go. I'll show you that when we get to that part, but it just makes life easier. So anyways, that's the issue with this table. So again, if you're not going to try to follow along and you want to just kind of see the concept, I'll manually link the table and just so you can kind of see it, and then we'll go through step by step redrawing it. Is that kind of what we want to do? Okay. So go to the tag tree. There's a bunch of other stuff that happens in this document too. So some of the stuff I'm just going to ignore for now, but we'll cover it by the time we're done. So if I'm going to manually link the table, first thing I need to do is assign all of my column headers, right, as column headers, and then make my row headers as well. Okay, right. So using the quick buttons at the top of the table headers. So now I've got my row headers, I got my column headers. Okay, then I can assign the data cells to the header cells. Of course, you can also see that while I have this work panel open, I really can't even see the table in the physical view, right? So this is another reason why it might be handy to print the thing out and draw your arrows and all that stuff, right? So down in the lower panel is where you select what you want to link stuff to, right? So here's the data cells for the first row header for FA accuracy of accounts contacts, and then at the top, in the top panel, I need to choose what header to link it to and then assign those headers, right? So the first thing is work my way down through the table, assigning all of the data cells to the correct row headers, right? So I just select and assign. I'm not doing the ones that are just the empties though. So again, just going down through all of the, so you're skipping these empties here and then getting these next ones and assigning all of the data cells to their immediate row headers. I have to do this one, right, because it is data, it's just an empty data cell. So once you've assigned all of your data cells to their row headers, then you have to assign them all to their column headers. So I just select that first column of data cells, and then in the top panel, choose the column header for definition. And then, this is kind of an important detail if you're going to try to do this, you want to choose append. Because if I choose assign now, it will undo all of my previous assignments and just assign that. But if I choose append, then it adds on. So for example, this cell here, it's been linked to both FA accuracy of accounts contacts and to definition. I can see in the panel right here what that cell's been linked to, right? So I'm going to do the same thing for the second column. appending to fiscal year 2012, and then the last column of data cells for fiscal year 2013 and append, right? So now, yeah,
So I just skipped the blank rows that you selected everything.
because it doesn't matter that this cell is linked to definitions because it's just going to skip over it, but I don't want it to be read with outcome measures, right? Because really what I want is outcome measures read with FA accuracy of accounts contacts and tax law contacts, right? Okay. So step one is assign the data cells to the row headers and then the column headers, and that order matters, right? And then I need to assign FA accuracy of accounts contacts and FA accuracy of tax law contacts to outcome measures, right? Because that's kind of the next row header that it's related to. So I haven't assigned those to anything yet, so I can hit assign now. Then I want to do the same thing for tax law contacts, accounts contacts, form contacts, and other, and link those to balance measures, right? And assign that. And then total number of all TAC contacts gets linked to workload indicators. Customer satisfaction and customer dissatisfaction get linked. Now this is bad authoring because you're going to have customer satisfaction get read twice, but I'm handed this PDF and told to fix it. That's what I get, not rewriting it. And then employee satisfaction, FA, gets linked to employee satisfaction. And then the last step is outcome measures, balanced measures, workload indicators, and this customer satisfaction that doesn't have anything next to it, and employee satisfaction, all get linked to measure name, right? So you're just kind of like working your way out and up, in the table. So when I uncheck that checkbox now, so then when I start clicking around in my table, for example, this cell's been linked to total number of all TAC contacts, and it's been linked to fiscal year 2012 actual, right? FA accuracy of tax law contacts is linked to outcome measures. Balanced measures and so on are linked to measure name. And there you go, right? So that's it. Really, really quick. So, okay. I don't even want to ask if there's any questions. That's one way. Are there any questions? I mean, I'm happy to answer questions, but I'm sure there's either lots or you're just like, okay, make it stop. All right.
It's pretty straightforward. You just have to remember which order to do.
Yep. So according to specification, you have to link row headers before column headers, right? So that's why with the data cells, I started with the row headers and then appended the column headers, right? And then once
Everything else gets assigned. The appending only happens when you're doing the data to the column.
So let me just, word it more generically. When you choose cells the first time, then you assign them to something. But if that cell then also needs to be associated with something else, then you use append for second, third, whatever. Does that make sense? Cool.
But within the headers, I noticed you were also assigning those, not appending.
Right, because for example, FA accuracy of accounts contacts, it had something assigned to it, but it hadn't been assigned to anything yet. Right. So I assigned it the first time to outcome measures. If it also had another column header, then I would have to append, right? Yeah. Yep. Okay. That's why it's helpful to like print this out and draw your arrows for what's associated to what. Okay. All right. Any other questions on that? No? Okay. I'm not going to save and close. I'm going to close, but I'm not going to save because I want to just start over, right? And then we'll start over together. So, okay. All right. So, redrawing it's also helpful to draw. It's helpful to not really print it out, but draw out where you're headed. So here's the table editor, and I'm going to zoom in, right, so that we can see. So here's the table editor beforehand, right? So we've got outcome measures with its empty cells over here, and then balance measures with its empty cells, and so on, right? Where we're headed is to the next slide. There. So outcome measures, move it out to the side, make it span the 2 rows, right? Balanced measures out to the side, make it span the 4 rows, right? Workload indicators only spans 1. Customer satisfaction and employee satisfaction, okay? That's where we're headed. So if you're going to redraw a table, at least until you get used to the process, it might be helpful to literally do this, right? I've started to redraw complex tables without doing this and found myself in a heap of trouble pretty quick. So, like I said, until you figure it out, this can be handy to do. But once you understand the process, it's the same thing over and over again. Okay, so that being said, I'm going to go ahead and open up Common Look. And we can pop back and forth between the PowerPoint and the PDF to look at where we're headed if we need to. All right. So I'm assuming everybody's got Common Look open, right? Okay, cool. So right-click on the table tag and choose Show Table Editor. Okay. Now, when I'm redrawing a table, I take a different approach. I'm not going to assign my column headers and my row headers first because I'm going to be moving stuff around in the table. And as I move stuff around, something that might start out as a header might need to become a data cell, or vice versa, or it might even just go away with redrawing the table, right? So I am going to start with making sure that my table editor view matches the physical view, right? So if you have to highlight the whole table and generate a new table and all that stuff, you might want to take care of that cleanup stuff, merging the cells that need to be merged and whatever, to make the table editor look like the physical view, right? Because you're going to see, as soon as we start redrawing this table, it's not going to look like this anymore. And some people get confused like almost immediately. So at least start with the 2 tables looking like each other, right? I just find that that's, easier to handle. So has anybody solved the Rubik's Cube? No? Anybody seen it done? Yes, some of us have seen it done. I can't do it, but my sister and my nieces can do it. And from my observation, it looks like they fix one side and then they fix 2 sides, right? And then they start working on the other sides. But while they're working on sides 3 and 4, sides 1 and 2 get a little bit messed up, right? So how is this relevant? We've got a table that looks okay, but it's not great, right? It's not solved, but it's fair, right? But we're going to mess up sides 1 and 2 while we're putting this whole thing together better, right? So that's how it relates. So if you're trying to solve the Rubik's Cube and you're stuck on, oh, I just messed up side 1, yeah, well, it's going to happen. But trust the process, kind of, and we'll get there. So in looking at the redraw, outcome measures is in front of FA accuracy of accounts contacts and FA accuracy of tax law contacts, right? So in the table editor, click in the cell for FA accuracy of accounts contacts. Okay? And we want to put a cell in front of it that we can then move outcome measures in front of. All right? Now, you can probably tell, too, this is going to be a whole bunch of steps, and it's going to be pretty exact. So if I lose you on one of them, please yell, scream, and flail. Okay? So anyways, you've got FA accuracy of accounts contacts selected, right? The first button at the top of the table editor is to insert cells. So click that button, and you've got the radio button for insert cell before, and we've got number of cells set to 1, so just hit OK. All right, and you're going to put 1 cell in front of FA accuracy of accounts contacts. So far, so good? All right. Jenny, I'm going to undo that. Nope, no worries.
Which one are you on?
We're on complex table number 2.
Okay.
Right? And we're going to redraw it. So, do you have it open?
Yes.
Okay, and COM looks open?
Yes.
And your table editor's open?
Well, it's almost.
Okay. No worries.
I have it open. Okay, I'll open the table.
Right?
Show table. Okay, got it.
Got it? Okay, so in the cell for FA accuracy of accounts contacts,
Uh-huh.
select that cell.
Okay,
And then the first button at the top of the table editor is for insert cells.
okay,
So hit that,
okay.
and then insert a cell before. You're going to do 1 and hit OK.
All right, got it.
So there we go. All right.
Oh, cool.
Now, you've got your new cell made, right? So the correct thought process is, I've got my new cell made. Hopefully you didn't click anywhere else, right? It's still selected. If you did click somewhere else, click back into that cell so that it's selected, please. The correct thought process is, all right, I just made this cell. With it still selected, I need to then go select what I want to put into it, right? So hold down the Control key or Shift, either way, and choose Outcome Measures. So you have both selected, right? And then merge those two. So Control M will merge those two cells, right? And you move Outcome Measures down in front of FA accuracy of accounts contacts, right? Now, just stay there, watch up here. I'm going to undo that and show you a common mistake. So with my new cell made, right, if I then incorrectly choose Outcome Measures to put into the new cell, right, so I reverse the selection order, then when I merge, I'm basically right back where I started, right? So that's obviously not the right answer. I've got this cell selected, and then just choose what you want to put into it and merge those two cells. All right. Then we need Outcome Measures also to be in front of FA accuracy of tax law contacts, right? So logically, one might think put a cell in front of there and do the same thing, right? Because here's our redraw, right? Outcome Measures is in front of these two. However, the correct answer to get Outcome Measures in front of the next one down is not to insert a cell. It's actually to change the row span for Outcome Measures so that it spans 2 rows, right? So in the Properties panel, scroll all the way down and make your row span set to 2. Hit the Tab key after you type in the number 2, right? And then you've got it where it needs to go, right? Yeah, it pushes, it spans down and it just pushes everything else over out of the way, right? I'm going to undo that and show you what happens if you forget that that's the way to go about it. So if I insert a new cell in front of FA accuracy of tax law contacts, right? And then I've got that selected, and then I select Outcome Measures, and then I merge. Oops. Right? Yeah, it took it out from in front of there, put it down here, put this over. Now if you think to yourself, oh no, shoot, that was row span, right? So now if I change the row span to 2, row span goes down, right? You can't span up. So you start up at the top where you want it, and then you make it, right, make it go that way. So undo a couple of times here. Change my row span back. Right. Now keep in mind too, I'm teaching you one way to redraw a table, right? My former office mate, you know, the remediation team leader, I taught him how to do this stuff, right? And then one day he was working on this massive document, tables all over the place, and I had kind of a lighter day, so I was like, hey man, do you want me to, you want me to help you with some of these tables to kind of, knock them out? And I mean, they were wickedly complex, right? And because they were so complex, and because it was his name on the project, right, at the end of the day, I wanted to make sure that as I'm redrawing these tables, I'm interpreting them at least how he would, right, so that I'm redrawing it so that he approves, because if his boss doesn't approve, right, I don't want to be getting him in trouble, right? So I'm like, hey man, check out this table, and am I reading this correctly, and so on. And so he and I are looking at this table, and he's like, yeah. So he's talking to me about how he would redraw it, right? He's like, do this, blah blah, blah and all this stuff, and I honestly could not follow what he was talking about, right? His method of redrawing the table. I mean, I taught him how to redraw tables, and then he took it and put his own spin on it so that it like totally was different. So I'm teaching you a way that works for me. If this way works for you, awesome. If this way doesn't work for you, go ahead and change it, right? Figure out a way that does work for you with your thought process and so on. As long as your table ends up redrawn correctly at the end of the day, you're good, right? How you get there, I'm just showing you a way that makes sense to me, right? So there's no like one right way to redraw a table. So for what it's worth. Now, if you look above outcome measures, I've got this partial row here, right, with these 3 empty cells in it, right? If I do a skip empty cell cleanup, right, Control E, they're not going to go away, right? Because they're cells. That's what skip empty cells leaves behind is cells, right? If I do a full cleanup, they'll go away. But the problem is there's also data cells in my table that I need to have empty cells. So I don't want to do a full cleanup, right? By the way, when you're in tables, there's another cleanup option, and I'll show you this one. So if I right-click on the table tag and go to cleanup, now you see 3, right? I didn't mention the third one yesterday. So there's skip empty cells, and there's the full cleanup, and then there's clean table. If you've got empty tags in this table that you want to get rid of, and that's fine to get rid of, let me word it this way. Clean table is a full cleanup limited to just that table, right? So you can choose clean table to do a full cleanup on this table and not destroy other ones in the document, whereas outside the table, if you do a full cleanup, that gets rid of all of the empty tags and all of the tables and potentially messes up your tables.
So if I highlight those cells and I right click and I do clean up and clean table, it's just going to take away those 3 cells.
No, it's not.
Oh,
Clean table is going to be a full cleanup for that table,
Even though they're highlighted. Okay.
right? Yeah, yeah, it doesn't matter. So it's going to get rid of the other empties that you need. Okay, yeah.
So skip empty.
So skip empty cells is fine, but it's not going to get rid of those because, right, that's what skip empty cells does. So options here are just, get those selected, hit the delete key. Wow, not that, I just deleted the whole table. Thank God for undo, right? So we'll try that again. So select those and then hit the delete key, right? And those empty cells go away, except I still have the empty TR in my tag tree, right? But now when I hit Control E for the skip empty cell cleanup, that empty TR goes away. Right? That's one way to clean that stuff up. If I undo, I've got these 3 empty cells back now, right? I could just select them, use that to help me find the table row that contains them, and then just delete that table row. Follow me? Moral of the story is at the end of the day, get rid of your empty table rows. Okay. Good morning.
Good morning. I have a question and a request. It has been requested of me to request of you if we could take a short break now for 15 minutes and allow everyone to participate in the first held TED Talk, which is right across the hallway, which goes for just 15 minutes.
Bye. Have fun.
So according to, so as soon as the TED Talk is over, you gotta come right back because we're really interrupting Paul's training. But come on over to the TED Talk. Thanks, Paul.
No, don't save and close because we're just going to come right back. So yeah, you can save if you want to, but whatever.
But come now because they're about to start our show in a week.
Okay, we're coming. There's donuts.
Should we just keep it running?
Oh, we can pause it, I suppose, can't we? We'll. All right. Okay, so
There we go.
outcome measures, right? Yeah, we we put outcome measures in front, and then we changed the row span to 2, which pushed FA accuracy of tax law contacts over, right, to put outcome measures in front of it as well. Right? Make sense? Okay. And then we cleaned up the empty partial row that was at the top, right? Got rid of that TR. Okay. We're going to come back and deal with the column headers at the end. We'll keep working our way through the, through the body of the table. So, looking at our redraw, balanced measures then needs to go in front of tax law contacts, right? So, in your table editor, choose the cell for tax law contacts. Hit the button at the top of the table editor for insert cells and put one in front of tax law contacts. With that cell still selected, hold down Control Shift or whatever and choose balanced measures, and then Control M to merge. Right? And then, in looking at our redraw, how many rows does balanced measures need to span? Right? Needs to span 4. So, in the table editor, balanced measures is still selected. Go over to the properties panel and change the row span to 4. Right? And then get rid of your partial empty row that was left behind.
Just delete it, like get rid of it.
Yeah, so you can either select the cells, right? So here's the cells. If I select the cells and delete those, I'm left with an empty TR.
Okay.
But I could just hit the delete key and delete the table row, right? Or if I hit Control E, then it gets rid of the table row.
First delete the cells and control. Okay, thank you. Mine doesn't look that way.
I heard mine doesn't work that way.
I'm gonna undo it and then watch you.
I mean, I started on with you, and then here I was gonna do my insert cells,
Yep.
right? And I left it at that, and then I
Right. So
was it supposed to go to the right?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
because you inserted a cell in front of tax law contacts, push there. Right.
Okay.
So you've got your new cell selected. So now select what you want to put into it. So you're going to hold down Control and choose balance measures and then merge. There you go.
And then that's.
And then balance
Because it's
measures.
balance measures starting over here.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Right? So then change balance measures row span to there you go.
And now
And
it's.
then we have the empty, if you scroll up a little bit, you have the empties, right? So then we just got rid of that table row, right? Yeah.
And then
There you
just controlling.
Well, hit the delete key. Control E
delete.
will leave those behind, right? Because that's skip empty cells. So get rid of the cells, and then Control E will get rid of the empty table row.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. So, continuing on, workload indicators needs to go down one row in front of total number of all TAC contacts, right? So, choose total number of all TAC contacts, insert a cell before, hold down Control and choose workload indicators, and then Control M to merge. Right? And then again clean up the empty parts left behind. Right? So then here's where it gets a little bit confusing maybe. Choose the customer satisfaction that has stuff to the right of it. Right? It's the second of the two customer satisfactions. Are you following me on that one? Right? Okay. Then you want to insert a cell in front of that one, and then move the other customer satisfaction down in front of it. And then what should the row span for customer satisfaction be? 2, right? And then remember to clean up your empties. You know what? If you want to look up on the screen, real quick, when you get done with that, look up on the screen. There's one other common mistake that I forgot to mention that I want to show you. so that you can see what happens, right? So, all right. So for employee satisfaction, right? Let's say that you forget to move it down a row and put it in front of employee satisfaction FA, right? You've got it here, and you know that you want it in front of employee satisfaction. I've seen some people do this with employee satisfaction, just change the row span to 2, right? And so what it does is, notice that it does move it in front of where it should go, right? But the problem is it's also a row header for that empty row, right? And that's not correct. Okay, so you're conveying the information that this cell spans 2 rows. There's only data in one of them. And now I also have a hole over here, right? I mean, I've seen people fix that by choosing a cell and inserting a cell before. There, now it all lines up, right? But that doesn't make it any more accurate, right? In fact, it's still just as inaccurate. You've fixed your regularity problem, your table, your regular, anyways. Yeah. You got that recorded too, Tony. That's awesome. You've solved that issue, but you still have the wrong stuff going on over. Don't do that, right? Cross that out. So, okay. Undo, right? So the correct answer would be to insert a cell in front of employee satisfaction FA, and then move employee satisfaction down in front of it, right? And then clean up your parts, your pieces. Did I lose you?
No, it's okay.
Okay. Okay. All right. So do you have your new row headers out in front of where they should be and spanning and all that good stuff? Yeah? Okay. So then scroll back up to the top of your table editor. You just have one issue left, and that's that your column headers don't line up with stuff when you shifted it over, right? Okay. So on the right side of the top row, fiscal year 2013 target should be over the last column, right? 2012 should be over the second to the last column. Definition should be over the middle column, if you will, right? Now, remediator's choice on how you interpret this table kind of comes into play here. So in the redraw here, if I go up to the top, I put measure name above outcome measures, balanced measures, workload indicators, and so on. And so there's an empty cell over these kind of sub row headers, and then definition is over the column with all the definitions, right? So to do that here, I could either choose definition and insert a cell before it, which pushes everything over, right? Or, if I delete that, I could choose measure name and then just insert a cell after, pushes everything over, right? Or there's other ways to interpret this table. I've actually heard some people interpret the table this way, where they see the empty cell over outcome measures, balance measures, and so on, but then the measure name is this part here, right? So they want it associated that way. So if that's the way you see the table, right? My story about checking with my colleague on, hey man, how do you interpret this table? Right? To make sure that I was tagging it up the way that he wanted it tagged, right? So, I mean, a little bit of remediator's choice in how you interpret the table. If you're talking to the content author, if you are the content author, then hopefully you know how you wanted to interpret the table, right? If you're talking to the content author, subject matter expert, or whoever, then, you know, maybe you could say, well, hey, how do you associate these things? And then you can figure it out. So, you know, however you want to go about it. Some people have asked me this question too. So for example, measure name, I could change the column span to 2 and have it push everything over, right? Now, if you do that, that's fine. And, you know, some standards like HHS really doesn't like empty cells in tables. However, if you do this, right, so the advantage of doing that is now you have one less empty cell in your table. You still have others below because you needed them for the data to line up. But if you do this, right, the downside to this is when you make it a column header, it becomes a column header for both columns. So if that's accurate for how you would interpret the table, then fine. But if it's not accurate for how you would interpret the table, then don't do that. All right? So kind of whatever you want to do there. I'm going to not make that span 2, and I'll put the empty cell. There you go. All right? So that's just like this redraw there. There, right? So anyways, once you've done your redraw, then you have to assign your headers, right? So take care of your column headers first, right? Select the top row, make those column headers, and then select the now 2 columns of cells that should be row headers, right? Make those row headers, and then hit the button, the second button from the left, the top of the table header, to generate your 1-level linked headers. Right? This button right here. After you've assigned your headers,
Oh, okay. And then highlight both of them?
you don't have to highlight anything.
Oh.
Right? Once you've assigned your headers, so you've selected your top row and turned those into column headers, and then you've selected these 2 columns of cells and you've turned them into row headers,
Oh.
then you just have to hit the button.
Okay, so how can I, okay, undo is a Control Z. Because I only select the row header 1. I didn't have 2 columns.
Well, you don't have to undo, just reselect what you wanted, right? So, yeah, so select the 2 columns worth of cells. Use the button to make them row headers. You don't have to have any cells in your table selected when you link them. Sometimes people ask me, do I have to, what do I have to select or not select or whatever. As long as you've got your column headers set and your row headers set, then just hit the button to link and you'll be good.
Okay.
Okay? But you've got to have your headers set, otherwise Common Look doesn't know what's a header to link to the data cells, right? So, to summarize the steps, make sure that you have a table in the tag tree when you needed one. Make sure that the layout matches the physical view. Figure out how to redraw it. Redraw doing the correct spans and all that stuff. Assign your headers, and then link. Right? 5 easy steps. Sure. Okay. Are we good with that?
Yep.
All right. Okay, so I didn't really mention it. Maybe you noticed, nobody said anything, but did you notice that there's some funky named tags inside your table? Like you've got table headnig and, again, table measure name and then text, right? If you go to the Insert Tag tab, you're not going to find the button to create a table headnig tag, right? So that's clearly not a standard PDF tag, okay? Custom tags are allowed in your document, right? Some programs, will just automatically make custom tags, or some people will make their own tags. Somebody probably tried to make this table heading, but they just, right, oops. So, okay, table measure name, right? So the fact that those tags are there is not an issue, but if you see custom tags in your document, then you want to do at least one of 2 things with them. You want to check and make sure that they've been role mapped to the correct tag so that a screen reader treats it like the correct standard PDF tag. Because a screen reader is not going to know how to handle table headnig, right? But if it's been mapped to a standard PDF tag, then a screen reader will treat it like that kind of tag. So I'm going to close the table editor just to get some real estate back on my screen. To check role mapping, go to the Windows tab, and then about halfway across your screen there's this little like laddery looking thing or an untwisted DNA strand or whatever labeled role map, right? When you choose the role map button, then you'll get the role map panel to open up. And this will list for you all of the custom tags that are in the document. And we can see table Heidnig, right, down here near the bottom. And it's been mapped to paragraph. So a screen reader is going to treat that like a paragraph tag. All right? If that's okay, then okay, you can leave it alone. If it's not okay, you've got a couple of options. First of all, you can select in the role map panel, right, where this paragraph tag is, and you could change it, right? If you wanted to change it, you could. So if I wanted to, for example, change this to a span tag, which we'll get more into span tags as the day goes on. But if I change it to a span tag, then now a screen reader is going to treat it like a span as opposed to a paragraph, right? So okay, if it's not right. Notice that it doesn't change it in the tag tree, it just changes how it's being handled, right? That's one way to go about handling role map tags. Now, that's not the way I go about handling them, that's just a way. My way of handling role map tags, as soon as I see a custom tag in the document, I go up to the top in the tag tree, right click on the tag root, and choose remove role maps. That automatically converts every custom tag to its standard PDF tag that it's been mapped to, right? So that gets rid of all of them. So now table Heidnig all just became span, whereas outcome measures, or I'm sorry, table measure name or whatever became a paragraph, right? So everything got converted to just paragraphs, which is what it was mapped to, okay? Why I do that is because I'm going to walk the whole tag tree anyways. So if I see that a role map tag got converted to something that's not correct, I'll just change it to the correct tag while I'm on that tag anyway, right? Whereas sometimes if you've got role map tags and you don't check, or you've got custom tags and you don't see what they've been mapped to, it can really be confusing and weird. Right? We haven't gotten to table of contents yet, but a table of contents is like a specialized list. Okay, so you're going to have your TOC tag, which then contains TOCIs for TOC item, right? Table of content item, just like we had list and list item, right? So somebody emailed me one time with this question. The error message that was coming up was TOC can't be the parent of TOCI. But in fact, it has to be the parent of TOCI, right? Table of contents is the parent for table of content item. However, finally, after a little bit of digging and checking things out, like the role mapping, we realized that wherever it was that this document came from, somebody made a custom TOC tag. They named it TOC, but they mapped it to heading level 2. So while it said TOC as the parent to TOCI, which looked right, its functionality was that a heading level 2 was the parent to TOCI, and that's not right. Right? So if you remove the role maps, we would have seen that there's an H2 with all of these TOCIs as its children, and realized, hey, that should be a TOC tag, not an H2, and converted it. Would have saved a whole lot of pain and frustration. Right? So that's why I just remove role maps. It puts everything out there what it is, and then I can either keep it or change it as needed. Right? Does that make sense? Okay. So I'm going to close the role map panel. Other things about this document. So check this out. You might enjoy this one too. Right click on your table tag again and choose collapse all. It's the 4th option down in your context menu. Collapse all shuts your table tag, right? But if you open the table tag again, then it's just back down to the table row level, right? Not opened up to all of the THs and TDs and stuff inside. Okay. So another thing I like to do with this document is this part right here, right above the table where it says the chart below provides blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, right? But let's pretend for the sake of this example that that's a caption, right? It's a table caption, all right? Sometimes you see that as table 1 then describes the table, or figure 1, right, whatever, right? So let's pretend, for the sake of the example, that this is a table caption. Right now, the text is in the paragraph tag right above the table tag, all right? So just select that paragraph tag, and then go to the Convert Tag tab, and we're just going to convert that to a caption tag, all right? So that's step 1, convert it to a caption. I'm going to close it, right? So did everybody do that? With me so far? Now, table captions go inside table tags, but they don't go inside table row tags. All right, so this caption, because in the physical view it's above the table, I'm going to move the caption tag inside the table, but above the first table row, right? So I just dragged it in there. I mean, you can move it a number of ways. You can cut and paste or whatever. You can't do Control-Shift-Down arrow. We'll just move it below the table, right? But you got that there? Because the caption in the physical view is above the table, I put it before the first table row. If the caption was below the table in the physical view, right, if it was down here, then I would put it after the last table row. You have 2 options for where to put your caption tag for tables. Above the first TR or after the last TR. Don't put caption tags between 2 table row tags. Right? You either get it at the top or the bottom. Okay? Now, you know that you can also have figure captions, right? So you've got a picture, you got a chart or whatever, and it's got a caption. So your chart gets alternative text because the figure tags need alternative text. But then you have a caption. A couple of important things. Do not put a figure caption tag, don't put the caption tag for figure inside the figure tag. So caption tags do go inside table tags, right? But not inside figure tags. Thinking back to stuff about figures that we talked about yesterday, can anybody come up with a good reason why you would not put a caption tag inside a figure tag?
Inside a figure tag, because the figure reads as like a image, and then that would probably mess up whatever alt text or something else that you have in the figure, maybe?
Yeah, you're on the right track. Let's explore that a little bit. So figure tags need what?
Alt text.
Right. So figure tags need alt text, and when a tag has alt text, what's the only thing that gets read?
Oh, the alt text.
The alt text, right?
Okay.
So if you have a figure tag with alt text and then you stick the caption tag inside it, the caption's not going to get read because alt text wins, right? Yeah.
So that was like one of those radio logo. Was it for the figure was like the radio logo, or no, I can't remember what was the figure that we used yesterday.
Well, we had a whole bunch of images.
Like a comic
Yeah. Well, we gave that alt text, right? Logo for the radio station.
Right. So if you insert.
If you put a caption inside the figure tag, the caption doesn't also get read, right? Now, here's an interesting, yes? Select the paragraph tag, not the text element. Did that work? Yeah. Usually, if your option that you want is grayed out or otherwise not available to you, then you probably selected the wrong thing. Right? Like you can't convert text, but if you select the tag, then you can convert it. Yeah. So here's an interesting thing to consider. Your figure tag, right, in your document needs to have alternative text. But if you've got a caption that describes what's going on in that pie chart, for example, how much alt text do you need to give to the figure tag then? Do you need to put all of the text that's in the caption also in the alt text for the figure? No, because then they're hearing it twice, right? So your alt text could be something like, pie chart of blah, 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 as described in the following caption. So somebody hears, this is a pie chart, it's described in the next tag down, I might want to read that next tag down, and then you get it, right? So, could just be something like that, if you've got a really descriptive caption, right? But no, you don't need to like copy and paste the text and make that the alt text, because then, you're not, if you're looking at the document, you're not going to read the caption twice, right? I mean, unless you're like, huh? And you have to read it again, but, so anyways, okay. Caption, fixing the table, role maps. I think that's it. Are we good with this document? Save and close, or don't save and close, I don't care.